Good day, everyone. I am Nico Guzman, and today I am going to discuss to you the traditional view of learning process, changes in views of the learning process, a shift from teaching to learning, and theories supporting the new view of the learning process. The traditional view of learning process. Now, before, the traditional education believes that learning is hard. Actually, the definition of the adjective hard is not actually defined by the meaning itself, but this is a connotation of the feelings that the students have while working, while learning. Now, if the students are having fun or enjoying what they are doing in the learning activity, they probably are not learning because they see learning as a sober or as a serious activity, as a serious undertaking that students have. And it seems that the students have no right to be happy or to enjoy when actually they need happiness or they need enjoyment while learning, because that's when only quality is assured. And that makes learning for students very tedious before. They find it boring because they are inhibited even how they must feel on a certain activity or in a certain aspect of the learning process. Second, Second, learning is based on a deficit model of the student. Now, instead of focusing on the strengths or on what the students can give to in the classroom, the teachers before or the educational system looks more or focus more on on the deficiencies of the students, what they lack, and once recognized, once identified, they either remediate it, or worse, if not remediated after many attempts, they are going to fail that student. Now, this is a good approach. However, we need to see students as having this dual nature, that aside from having weaknesses, they also have strengths. And that strengths are their interests. And when we try to spark their interest, that's the time that they become better learners. Now, to prove that, here is a school for thought by Brewer. Research overwhelmingly concentrates on the weaknesses of poor children. The weaknesses identified are often deficiencies in terms of the traditional organization and content of schooling. The weaknesses identified in students are actually reflections or actually telling the educational system or the people in education, that in the educational system, that they too has deficiencies in their organization, in their content, or generally in the curriculum. Next, learning is a process of information transfer and reception. We have this system before in education called the banking system, wherein, just like a bank, the teacher deposits information, the students receives it. However, time after time, there is no rehearsal or there is no recall of information. Eventually, this information is withdrawn. And aside from that, just like a pail being filled with water non-stop, eventually it will overflow and it will only lead to information overload. This is the danger of transfer and reception. We could not assure retention, we could not assure application. So there is no lifelong learning happening in this type of instruction, in this type of pedagogy. Fourth, learning is an individual or a solitary process. Because it is a solitary process, we tend to seclude ourselves from others, trying to be very serious in learning. Now, most students spend long hours working alone at their tasks, completing worksheets or repetitive tasks, and this is according to National Assessment of Educational Progress. The call of students is to have a broader and more exciting curriculum, to have activities that spark or that allows them to initiate learning, that allows them to think, that allows them to discover, innovate. They become more active rather than being, passive, inactive, dormant, because they're just used to this tedious, repetitive task time after time. More work allowing them to think for themselves, this is what I've said before, design and make things, experiment, engage in first-hand observation. Fifth, learning is facilitated by breaking content instruction into small isolated units. Actually, Jigsaw is better than the learning process before, because we tend to we tend to put effort in assembling the pieces, right? And when we assemble these pieces, we see the whole picture. We see the connection between those pieces. However, that is not the case with learning process before. They just teachers teach the contents into broken pieces without giving connection, without giving clear distinctions. I mean, connections between these. No. So that's why it's hard to revisit their prior knowledge and introduce new knowledge which is founded with prior knowledge. That is a challenge for the teachers before. Yet they were not able to figure out how exactly they're going to solve it. Categorizing and analyzing patches of knowledge rather than sewing them together. The last traditional view, learning is a linear process. Textbook or teacher provides only one linear path through a narrowly bounded content area or sequence of standardized instructional units. This is true, especially in mathematics, because there is only one possible solution, one possible standard formula for a problem, even if it's solved in any other way, but we have this standard, this really one standard that can guide the students. However, this is not the way when we teach other subjects, we teach other courses to our students. We need not only to conform what is offered by the textbooks, because that is also a manifestation of a linear learning process. We need to research more information, grasp information in a way that we do not go outside the box, outside of the context. Now, let's go to the changes in views of the learning process. These are the views that we are trying to leave now. First, learning is a natural process. Our brain naturally works, and our brain works differently from individual to another individual. Not everyone learns in the same way. That's why we have different learning styles, we have different inclinations. There are different learning, perceptual, and personality styles. What do they need? What do the students need? Interesting and rich learning environments and supportive and stimulating teachers. When we have this in our learning environment, we can assure that we welcome diversity. We welcome different learning styles, personalities, and perceptions in the same room. No, we try to build commonality. However, we try to preserve their differences. Next, learning is a social process. Students learn best in collaboration with peers, teachers, parents, and others when they are actively engaged in meaningful, interesting tasks. By Vygotsky in 1978. Later on, we'll get to know more about Vygotsky's theory about this one. It's really true. When we try to collaborate, we learn more rather than learning by our own. No? With the help of the information and communication technologies, our interaction and collaboration are widened. We can work even with this distance that we have from each other. We can learn different things. We can access information in different resources. And a challenge for us is to be careful on what among the resources that we have when we try to get information. Are they reliable? Are they relevant? Learning as a social process must be meaningful, must lead to quality learning, and must not lead to myths, to misconceptions, to conflict of ideas. Rather, just try to challenge ideas, but not in a way that it's not healthy anymore. It's becoming toxic, and people don't have anymore these manners when presenting their ideas, when presenting their knowledge. Third, learning is an active process and not a passive process, because we have the power to think, we have the power to act for ourselves. We're not just people who are acted upon, but we act for ourselves. We are not mere reproducers of knowledge, but we produce knowledge. We produce knowledge guided by our teacher. How do we produce knowledge? That is by discovery, learning by discovery. Must be based on an understanding of prior knowledge. Now, if we have prior knowledge, we're able to connect it with new knowledge. That is production of knowledge already. And if we have knowledge already, we can have this competence. Now, what do they need exactly? Solve real problems, produce original writings, complete scientific research projects, conversing on important issues. These will allow the students not to merely sit in a corner and listen to your overwhelming information, that they'll be bombarded and eventually they'll be exhausted. These are more interactive, energetic, and dynamic. Next, learning may either be linear or nonlinear. Mind is a wonderful parallel processor that attends to and processes different types of information simultaneously. You know, uh, not just we are able to process information consequently, but we also process them simultaneously, different information simultaneously. In our mind, we have this cognitive maps, we have this structure of knowledge that can be connected with the addition of knowledge time after time. So it could either be revised, removed, or added. Cognitive theory, and according to the cognitive theory and research, learning is a reorganization of knowledge structures stored in our semantic memory as cognitive maps. The modern view of learning process is anchored also to Pribram's holistic brain theory, which is the global presentation of information, or the simply telling us that learning is integrative and contextualized. So when we say global presentation, this means that information is easily assimilated by students when it is presented integratively and is contextualized rather than when just taught simply or in sequence. According to Jacob Bronowski, this is the act of unifying. And as teachers, we can facilitate in this and let the students discover the connection, the meaningful link with your teaching, either implicitly or explicitly. You can explicitly tell that this is the connection between what they've learned before, or what they've learned, what they've seen from their context, from the setting, and try to integrate it to the new learning. So that could be presented implicitly or explicitly. That is our strategy as a teacher. What do we think is the best way to introduce or to introduce connection? Next, learning is based on a strength model of students' abilities, interests, and culture. Now, this view actually is the best anchor, or the best foundation of today's educational system, because we need really to accept and we need to welcome, accept, and even empower diversity within our classroom. We need to focus on what they can give differently rather on what they cannot give differently, because when we try to focus on their strengths, there is power, there is will, and then when we have that, then we could assure that there is a progress, there incremental change, not just this negative change, downfalls in education, discouragement of students. Now, this is based on the work of Howard Gardner, having anchored in the belief that students have multiple intelligences. These consider specific strengths and interests of students, and the diversity and individual differences are valued. And lastly, learning is assessed for task completion, products, and real problem, so of both individual and group efforts. Before, we are used to having this traditional assessments, paper and pencil test, which demands memorization. That actually is just about memorization of facts, which is very exhausting, which is draining the mind, and even the whole personality of the student. So there is no interest anymore. However, this our learning today, our learning process today, assess our students differently in a way that they will be able to enjoy, because we believe that positive feelings and attitude of students have a direct relationship to their learning. That is why we have this authentic assessment, which includes portfolios of actual performances and works in both collaborative and individual learning tasks. So these are very helpful today to really have a realistic basis of our evaluation as teachers, that we can really say this student has really learned from me. That would be for the views from the past and of today. Now we're going to talk about the shift from teaching to learning. So this changes the roles of the student and teachers, different from before. Now here is a table that summarizes the role of how is it how learning process is before and after. As to the classroom activity, before it was teacher-centered, didactic, meaning it was just about the teacher having an authority over the classroom, and that authority becomes, dictatorship already. And didactic because there is just a two-way communication. There is no, even it's even just the teacher doing the speaking always, and the student is just required to speak when he or she is asked to do so. In a learner-centered learning environment, it is learner-centered already because we try to focus more and give attention to diversities. We value already the students' diversity, and it is interactive in the sense that everyone can freely give their opinions and ideas, considering that it is with respect to the topic and with respect to each other's culture, observing cultural respect, cultural sensitivity. Next, instructional emphasis. Before, it's all about facts memorization. Today, it's all about relationships, inquiry, and invention. So it's not that exhausting anymore, or it's not that draining anymore. It activates the mind. Concepts of knowledge, accumulation of facts, and it's more about the quantity. The more facts that you would be able to memorize, the better. However, today we transform facts. We try to put meaning or significance to these facts. What is the relevance of these facts to us? Then demonstration of success, norm reference. So there is a norm that everyone must meet, and when you do not meet that means you fail as a student, and failure before defines you. It's not simply an event. Today, in a learner-centered learning environment, there is quality of understanding. So we try to reconsider, we try to give chances because we believe that learning is not just in a snap of hand, that everything is grasped by the student. Then assessment, we have these multiple choice items. Then today we have this criterion reference, portfolio, and performance authentic assessments. And then the technology used, before we have this drill and practice, which of course makes use of the traditional technologies in a learning environment. But today we have communication, access, collaboration, and expression. Why then by the ICT? And then we have the changes in teacher role, a shift from knowledge transmitter, primary source of information, content expert, and source of all answers. The omnipotent teacher changes to someone who is reduced to someone like facilitator, collaborator, coach, mentor, knowledge navigator, and co-learner. When we say co-learner, he or she accepts corrections from students, learn from students. He also learns. He or she also learns. Then, teacher controls and directs all aspects of learning. He is the driver. Here, the teacher is the driver. Teacher then shifts to giving students more options and responsibilities for their own learning. So from a dictatorial government to a democratic government, so everyone is given the chance to speak. Everyone is included in the decision making. Now, this does not mean that we are trying to belittle the role of the teachers, or we try to really reduce to the point that it is making them less as teachers. No, it's not like that. They just need to learn more skills that they may be able to embody these roles, and these roles are perfect for making or for yielding students and individuals and even citizens in the future that are functional and productive, no? Very helpful in the society. So that's the power of a teacher. Then here are the changes in students' role. A shift from passive recipient of information, they're not just vessels, they are now active participant in the learning process. So what they can sense, they give feedback. Next, reproducing knowledge. No, they're not just like that. We're not just like that. We're not mere reproducers of knowledge, but we produce and share knowledge, participate at times as expert. We can also be expert in our own ways. No, we can consider ourselves already an expert, especially in technology. No? And learning as a solitary activity. Now we cannot deny the fact that learning alone is really hard. Learning alone is Makes you think, makes you question many things, makes you overthink. But when you collaborate with others, you will see the positive side of learning. You will see that learning is more when you have more. When you have more resources, when you have more peers to work with. So that these are the changes in our roles, the actors of a classroom, both to the teacher and student. Now, let us go to the theories supporting the new views of the learning process. First, first off is Vygotsky's social cultural theory. It is anchored on this principle that learning is a social process, so society or culture plays a central role in the learning of a child. It is also anchored in two aspects. First, for interaction with others, and then integrated into the individual's mental structure. So, a learning starts in a social level, wherein we, as a child, we interact with other people. With we interact first at our home, eventually outside, and from those interactions, we try to reflect and put it in our mind, and we didn't know that we already gain knowledge from that constant interaction we have from these constant people who, from these people who we used to be with. Second, zone of proximal development, or the ZPD, needing scaffolding. Now, this zone of proximal development is where the child is now cognitively ready for learning. However, needs scaffolding, or needs someone who has more knowledge. That is why we have this more knowledgeable other, or even peers, to help him, her, or him to better learn, or to be able to get the appropriate meaning of the experiences, or appropriate interpretation of those experiences. That is Vygotsky's social cultural theory. And the challenge for us as teachers is to provide a meaningful interaction within our environment. And next is John, another person who has this significant contribution in the new view of learning process. Now, learning occurs for adaptation to interactions with environment. So we adapt with, or we adjust, our learning. We adjust our learning as we try to reflect or ponder with our interactions. So if we just become passive with our experiences, we'll not be able to have the experience assimilation or accommodation. So what exactly are these? But first, let us have this term equilibrium. This is mental conflict. And this happens when we try to integrate our prior learning to our new learning. However, there are two solutions to overcome this equilibrium and create balance into our mind. When we say assimilation, this is the addition of existing knowledge and new experience. Now, for example, if we are, if we have, if we grow in a house where we have cats, we have this perception that a cat is a four-legged animal, has fur, and has a tail. If we see it on a magazine, if we see it on a media or social media or in any other material, we can say that yes, it is a cat. We are able to identify. So that is assimilation. No, we are able to create correct connection between our we are able to create connection in different contexts, provided that we are given the same example. Yet when we say accommodation, this includes rejection or transformation. Now, because we are having this description of a cat as being furry, having four legs and a tail, then if you see a dog, we might misinterpret, or a child might misinterpret it as something like as also a cat. So what we need to do as adult, or as an adult, is to correct them that no, it is not a cat. However, they share the same characteristics. So that is the point where they reject the idea that it is a cat and transform it into something new that tells them that this is different from a cat, this is a dog. So that is accommodation. They try to accommodate new learning, by having revision to their prior learning. Students have an active role in constructing his or her own knowledge. This is the time that the child is, or the student is the producer of the knowledge and not just a mere reproducer of it. So this is the way to construct knowledge through experiences, through interaction with our environment. Next is of Jerome Bruner, saying that learning is where learners construct new ideas or concepts based on prior knowledge and experience. Now, there are three principles to develop instruction. These are readiness, spiral organization, and going beyond information given. Now, if we say readiness, this means that we try to look, or we try to start with what is familiar to the students. So, for example, if we are if we're living in a coastal area, no, if we're like, for example, if we're a science teacher and we're trying to teach ecosystem, instead of asking what is ecosystem, so try to start a question by saying, what can you see around you? No? So that is based on the context that is familiar to the students. The student might answer a sand or a tree. So what is readily available to them? That's how we start learning. That's how we initiate learning and spark interest in learning. That is to establish their preparation or their readiness to the more complex, or to the main thought of the lesson. Second, it must be structured. So as the level of difficulty is increasing, and this is the important thing to note, that we must not skip a step, because learning is a step-by-step process. Third, it must be designed to facilitate extrapolation, or we need to go beyond the information given. So we need not only to base on what is given on the textbook. Next is problem-based learning. The goal of this is to develop higher order thinking skills by providing students with authentic and complex problems and cases. Now, when they are given a certain problem, they're able to analyze, create solution, and evaluate that solution if it was able to solve the problem effectively, efficiently, and then try to exhaust or think of another solution to that problem. So that is how their higher order thinking skills are brought out and developed with giving them problems. More authentic, because it allows them to articulate theories. No, they are able to anchor they're able to anchor their solutions or their proposed solutions on theories, on existing theories, create hypotheses. They're able to not just guess what is the appropriate solution or the result of their study, but also make a wise prediction. Critically discuss ideas, so they discuss ideas with substance, and then deeper level of understanding. This is when they have done all of this, they have articulated, created, and being critical, that will give them a deeper level of understanding. And then, frequently used in engineering, medicine, and architecture, for they will really be doing this in the future. Next, anchored instruction. Instruction is anchored in a real world context, problem, or solution. Technology has been used to help create real world contexts and situations for the use of video. Video segments provide the context for the subsequent learning and instruction, by Bransford and Stein on 1993. Now, if we say anchored instruction, we try to give them a piece of the real world, and a video can be a good mean, or can be a good medium to give them, or to allow them to experience the real world, or to witness what it is in the real world. So this could be documentaries, reports, real life movies, or based in real life situations, movies like that. Next is distributed cognition. Cognitive growth is fostered for interaction with others, like dialogue and discourse. And the challenge to us as teachers is to create dialogue and discourse with a substance, or with learning with meaning. Tools for online collaboration are designed to support collaborative knowledge construction and sharing in the classroom. We have the advancement of technology today, so that is the best tool for us. Even today, we have we can really say that technology has greatly helped us in terms of, our cognitive development, because today we cannot deny the fact that as learners we are trying really to be this independent students, independent learners. We have teachers, but it's more on, today demands more time on self-study rather, compared on before, no? So with the use of these on tools, we are able to create, or we are able to establish this online collaboration. Next is cognitive flexibility theory. People acquire knowledge in ill-structured domains by constructing multiple representations and linkages among knowledge units. Now, the overgeneralization may sometimes be the problem of this flexibility theory, and the call for teachers here is to create appropriate link, no, appropriate link between the plethora of information existing, not just in the online world alone offers a lot of information, and then revisiting of the same concepts and principles in a variety of contexts. So we have, for example, the concept of marriage in India is different from the concept of marriage in the Philippines. So that is talking about the same concept, however, with a relative meaning because of the changes of context. And this helps us when we have this cognitive flexibility. I believe that we will be able to understand more diversity. And then cognitive apprenticeship. Teachers or more knowledgeable others provide scaffolds to support learners' cognitive growth and development. These permits interaction, construction of knowledge, sharing of knowledge-building experiences with other members. So there is really a healthy interaction. No? If you say apprentice, we have the guidance from someone who has more expertise in a particular field or of a particular subject. ICT is a powerful new tool of apprenticeship. So we find a lot of tutorials in YouTube's or in other websites, and even a lot of readings that could aid our learning, that could further our understanding. Then we have the situated learning, use apprenticeship, coaching, collaboration, attending contexts, tasks, activities, and cognitive tools according to Brown, Collins, and Duguid on 1989. So what we have previously discussed, those are the synergy. They work in synergy with situated learning. And if you say situated learning, we try to offer them both familiar and new experiences, that their knowledge might be enriched, and more importantly, it would be applicable. They would be able to apply it in the future. Learning is the function of the activity, context, and culture in which it occurs, not abstract and out of context. It must be concrete, it must be explicitly understood, even given or even provided implicitly, or even the abstract concepts can become a concrete understanding to people. And it must never be out of context, of course, because the purpose of it is to fit within a context. No, the purpose of learning is for an individual to fit in a certain context. Yes. Then we have, say, self-regulated learning, awareness of one's own knowledge and understanding. So this is encouraging students, and even us as teachers, pre-service teachers, future teachers, to reflect of our learning, to think about the way we think, self-observation, self-judgment, and self-reaction. Now, are we satisfied with what we have done just recently? So we need to think, we need to evaluate ourselves, and the most important thing is to act upon what we have evaluated. And ICT tools can help develop metacognitive skills. Yes, it can be a great help to us because the way we think usually is widened by ICT. And that concludes my report. Thank you for listening and watching.